Paranormal Science. This is Paranormal Science on WILK.
Good evening. Welcome to Paranormal Science. I'm Joe Hawk.
And I'm Stan Zurich.
We have a interesting show tonight. Mark actually had set this up. I wasn't even aware. I started reading up on Mr. Schulhauser just today. We're going to have an author, Garnet Schulhauser, with us tonight. He had some pretty life-changing experiences, wrote a couple books. Two of his books are, let me get them up here, Dancing on a Stamp and Dancing Forever with Spirit. Let's bring Garnet with us. Hello, Garnet, are you with us?
Hi, how are you?
Welcome, sir.
Hello, Garnet.
Yeah.
We're actually we just kind of introduced you. If you would give a little history about where you're from and where you're at and how you got into all this.
Okay, well, I currently live in Victoria in Canada on the west coast, but I was born and raised in Saskatchewan, and I was raised in a very religious Roman Catholic family, and I served as an altar boy and followed all the rules of the church very faithfully for a long time, and then later in life I started to question some of their beliefs and their dogmas, and so by the time I hit my 30s, 40s, I had rejected a lot of their beliefs, and I was looking for a new paradigm to latch onto, with something that would answer all my questions that I constantly ask myself, like, who am I, why am I here, what's my life purpose, and what happens to me when I die. And then one day in 2007, after I finished high school and university, I ended up in law school and ended up practicing corporate law in Calgary for over 34 years.
Nice.
And so one day when I was still practicing law in 2007, I was taking a stroll down the street one sunny afternoon in May. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a homeless man jumps in front of me and stops me in my tracks. And he looked like a typical homeless man with sort of long, greasy hair and a scraggly beard and dirty, slept-in clothes. And my typical move when I encountered these people, usually on the street, was just to do a quick sidestep and go around them. But this guy was different because he had these amazing, dazzling blue eyes that shone like two little blue stars. And he basically stopped me in my tracks. I was transfixed because of his gaze, which at the first part was just basically he was penetrating deep within me, right down to the depths of my soul. And I felt like he knew everything about me, who I was, where I'd come from, everything I'd ever said and done, which was very strange because we had never met. And the other part of his gaze was sending me this wave of pure, unconditional love that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security. So I just stood there basking in his gaze, and I'm not sure how long it was until he finally broke my reverie by saying, "Why are you here?" And then he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. And so when I collected my wits finally, I went into the store to try to find him, but he was nowhere to be seen. And I went back out on the street and walked up and down hoping to find him, but he had seemingly disappeared into thin air. He was just nowhere around. So the very next day, I walked back on the same street, same time, hoping to spot him. And after strolling up and down for 15 or 20 minutes, I finally found him sitting all alone on a bench. And so then I went up to him, and I said, "Who are you, and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "Well, I'm a soul just like you, and I'm here to help you on your journey and answer all of your questions." And then my skeptical lawyer brain kicked in. And I said to him, well, you know how lawyers are, and they're skeptical and they're analytical, and I'm very much of a typical lawyer at the time. I said to him, "Why do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself?"
Right.
"Because you look like you've been sleeping on the street for weeks, and you smell like a dead fish." And he just gave me a big smile, and he said, "You know, looks can be deceiving. because you look like you're a successful lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade. He said, you can turn around and go back to your office and see if you can find your answers in all those emails waiting for you on your computer, or you can sit down and have a chat with me. So luckily my intuition kicked in, and it said that I really needed to sit down and talk to this guy. I mean, what did I have to lose? Half an hour of my life?
Right.
It was certainly worth a chance. So I sat down and began talking to this man, and that was the beginning of a dialogue that went on for, off and on for the next several months. And I found out his name was Albert, and he was actually one of my spirit guides in disguise. And he told me that I was the only one who could see him in physical form. I could actually see him and touch him. I touched him, and he felt very real to me. But he said I was the only one who could do that. So if anybody had been passing by the bench that day, they would have seen me sitting by myself on the bench, talking to myself. Huh. In any event, so and so I said to him, well, why did you appear to me as the homeless man? Because after the first 3 appearances, he no longer showed up as the homeless man. He was just a voice in my head, and we communicated by telepathy. And I said to him, why did you initially appear as the homeless man? And he said, well, had I just started talking to you out of the blue as a voice in your head, you likely would have thought you were losing your mind.
Right.
And so this way, it was his way of easing me into the conversation, because I identified with him as a physical person, this homeless guy that was sitting on the bench beside me. And then when he just started talking to me by telepathy, I recognized the voice, knew who he was, and I was comfortable in knowing that I was talking to my spirit guide, and I wasn't losing my mind. So it was a good way for him to get my attention and to get me into the conversation without causing me any great anxiety. So that's why he did it. And we had an amazing conversation. He gave me he answered all the big questions about life I'd been asking myself for years, plus many others. And during the course of it, he said, I'm here to answer your questions for sure, but I have another reason for our contact, and that is I want you to write a book about what I tell you, and which was really quite news to me, because I'd never ever thought about writing a book. And initially I was a bit reluctant, and I sort of tried to resist, but he was very gently persuasive, and so eventually I threw in a towel and said, okay, fine, I'll write a book. And that was my first book, Dancing on a Stamp.
Now, the book Dancing on a Stamp, I'm looking at it right now. Where does the title come into the book, Dancing on a Stamp?
Okay, well, that's actually, it's in the very last chapter. And how it came about was that at one point during our conversation, I was complaining about something that wasn't going right in my life. And Albert said, well, your problem is that you've been sort of stuck within one spot in your journey through this world. And he gave me the metaphor that the life on earth is like being in a big, beautiful ballroom, and the band is playing fantastic dance music, and everyone around you is up dancing and swirling around and enjoying the music and enjoying the whole ballroom. And he said to me, you have been spending too much of your time stuck on one spot, like you're wearing leg shackles. And he said, you need to break free of your comfort zone and quit dancing on a stamp.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice.
And so that phrase just stuck in my mind, and I thought, that might be a good title for my book. And I asked him if it was a good title, and he said, yes, go for it. So that's where the title came from, Dancing on a Stamp.
Very, very interesting. I'll say, it's true in what Albert says, and obviously what you said is that, think about it. I mean, at the time, as you were saying, you're a successful lawyer, so you had everything going on, and to just start hearing voices in your head, you probably would have thought something was wrong with you, correct? I mean, what would you, if you didn't know Albert as you did in the beginning, how would you have felt if he just started talking to you, mental telepathy?
Well, I probably would have thought that I was suffering from schizophrenia, and,
right, exactly.
And I probably would have tried to ignore it. I would have hoped that it would have gone away. I wouldn't have responded, and eventually I ended up in a psychiatrist's office.
Right.
I'm not sure how that would have played out. It didn't happen that way because of the way he had sort of introduced himself to me. And now I'm obviously very comfortable with him when he talks to me by telepathy, and I talk back, and we have a great conversation, and we've had for a long time, and so I'm very thankful that he showed up that way, and I think that he was very clever in the way he did it.
Right, so do I, as do I. I guess my next question, before we go on, although I don't want to break the timeline here, but just since you brought it up, do you still talk to him?
Well, yes, I do. Yeah, I still talk to him. After my first my first encounter with him was basically a dialogue. I would ask questions, he'd answer, and we'd have a conversation that way. That's my first book. Then after that, the second time he came into my life, which was a few months later, he actually he appeared in my bedroom one night. I was sound asleep. I woke up, must have heard something. Woke up in my bed, and I see this ghost-like ethereal figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And as it got closer, I recognized who it was. It was my old friend Albert, the homeless man, but he was in astral form. And and I said to him, okay, well, this is different. Why are you showing up here now? And he said, well, I'm going to take you on a series of astral trips, to the spirit side and to other places in the universe. And I want you to write about what you see, because there's a lesson for you and all humanity in every place I take you, or a nugget of wisdom, and I want you to write about them in your book. And he said, I'm taking you on these trips because a picture is worth 1,000 words. So rather than just me tell you, verbally what it is I want you to write about, I want you to see it. And I want you to see people in various places, and you can meet with them and talk to them. And there's as I said, there's a lesson or a message for all of us in every one of these trips. And so then what he did was he literally reached out, grabbed my hand, my astral hand, pulled my astral body out of my physical body, which was still left in bed, sound asleep. And he just said, come on with me. And then he just led me up through the ceiling of my house, up to the clouds, and we ended up hovering at a high spot above our beautiful planet. And that was sort of the beginning of my second set of encounters with Albert, where we traveled in astral form. And then, and that's detailed in my second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit. And then there's been another set after that, astral travels, all different from the first set, and those are described in my third book, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, which will be released sometime in early 2016. So yes, I've had a lot of contact with Albert since then. I still do talk to him, and he still does come back to take me on some out-of-body adventures whenever it suits him, and whenever he feels that there's a need for me to see something.
Well, Garnet, without giving away too much of what's in your book, I mean, what did he show you, or what have you learned from this?
Well, in in my astral travel book, in my first book, he basically gave me a bunch of sort of basic revelations. I can get into that if you want. In my astral travels, I went to the spirit side and I met with the Council of Wise Ones, which is the body that oversees all incarnations on our planet. I went to. I saw some scenes of abuse on Earth that he wanted me to see, to demonstrate to me, so I can give the message to my fellow humans that we really need to clean up our act. We need to discard our negative emotions and embrace love and compassion for everyone, and stop polluting our planet, and stop harming the other creatures, and stop abusing one another. That was one of the main messages. But I got to see, I got to visit New Earth in a higher dimension. I got to visit a planet where there is inhabited by a race of very intelligent spider-like creatures. I got to visit an ET spacecraft orbiting our planet, and I got to go to the Akashic Records and view parts of my current life and some of my other previous lives on Earth, and meet some very interesting people. So it was very, very exciting trips, and very colorful, lots to learn, and I hope that I've described them properly for people to appreciate what I went through and in my books.
I'll tell you what, Garnet, we're actually going to take a break, but I want you to pick a couple things out, maybe like 2 from the first book and 2 from the second, third, or one of each, and pick those topics, and we'll dig a little bit further into them if you don't mind when we come back.
Good.
All right, thank you. Everybody stand by. We'll be back in a little bit.
Hey, it's Mark Hayes from Paranormal Science. Did you ever get that feeling like you have 1,000 demons tearing at your back? You know the pain. Are you uncomfortable in your own body, like you're possessed with somebody else's torment and suffering? You don't need an exorcist. You need chiropractics. Dedicated to providing the best chiropractic and rehabilitative care possible, Chiropractics will get you back into the body you remember. Chiropractics, 569 Pierce Street, Kingston, PA. Check them out on the web, getchiropractics.com, TIX on the end, or call 570-288-5800 and get back to living.
right, welcome back. Last we left, we're talking to Garnet Schulhauser. Awesome guest. Garnet, you still with us?
Yep.
All right. I'll tell you, we were talking during the break, and it's just, I'll be honest with you, I am absolutely taken back by your story so far, and it takes a lot to give me chills. And I'm not saying that to sound weird or anything like that, but I've been in the business long enough, and of course, you being a lawyer, I'm in law enforcement, so we know it takes a lot to shock the conscience in the fields that we're in. And I will tell you this, like Stan and I were talking, for Albert to come to you in that way, that's exactly what he did. If he came to you as a regular person, he probably would have blew it off. But he shocked your conscience. He's someone that you take a second look at. And it's just it's amazing. It really is.
Yeah, it was really truly an amazing experience. It was very transformational for me because shortly after I met Albert and started talking with him, it just seemed like practicing law didn't seem to be very relevant to me anymore, and I actually retired from the law a year after I met Albert.
Oh, wow.
And it was just like it's like Albert had showed me a new path to follow, and I just, I was reluctant at first, but then I realized that's the path I have to go, which has nothing to do with law, and I have to take go on a new tangent, which involves staying in contact with Albert and writing a book, initially the first book, and then it's ended up being 2 and 3 books, and so I really enjoy my new path, and it's very much different from practicing law, and I'm very happy where I am. And he had to sort of nudge me away from where I was and to take the new path, and he did that by showing up as the homeless man. So it was very clever, and I have to tell you, once I started talking to this guy, it was just very evident. I knew that he was my spirit guide. I knew he was truthful, and I knew he was very wise and compassionate soul, and that whatever he told me just rang true to me. It was like, wow, that just totally makes sense. And I have to tell you that a lot of what he told me flew in the face of what I was taught by the Christian church as a kid growing up, and what Christian holy men have been preaching for centuries. So a lot of it was just totally way off base, and in terms of the Christian religion, and having been raised that way, it was like it was a bit of an eye opener for me. And let me just tell you, quickly some of the things that he said that sort of his startling revelations. I mean, first of all, he said that we're all here on this planet having a journey in a human body, and we chose to incarnate here. It was our choice, and nobody forced us to do so, and that God or the source didn't make us or anyone else. And we started off on the spirit side, which a lot of religions describe as heaven. Very nice place, beautiful place with no negative emotions, no crime, no fear, no anger, none of the stuff that we have on earth, nothing but unconditional love, just a wonderful, beautiful place. And he said, but we chose to incarnate here. And I said to him, well, if I came from such a wonderful place, why on earth would I choose to come to this planet? Life on earth is no walk in the park, as we all know.
Right.
And there's a lot of difficulties, and there's we have a lot of problems, and we face challenges all the time. I said, why would I want to come here? And he says, well, souls choose to come, incarnate into a physical body on earth in the dense planes, to learn and experience things that just don't exist on the spirit side. It's part of our learning process. Earth is just one big school, and we choose to come here to learn things and help us with our evolution as souls, because we're all trying to evolve and acquire more wisdom and knowledge and to advance our level of our souls, and so that's why we come here. And he said, and before we incarnate, we all choose the lives that we want to experience on earth. So we prepare what he calls life plans, and in those life plans we pick out the major aspects of our new lives, things like the place we're going to be born, the first language we learn, the identity of our parents and our siblings and other relatives and friends and coworkers and so on, and eventually even spouses. And we do that for a very specific reason. We plan out things that we hope to experience, some lessons for us to learn, some challenges for us to overcome. We do that very deliberately, but it's just a very general blueprint, because once we're born, we don't remember that we have a life plan, and we have free will to take actions on our planet. And so basically he says, we stray off course a lot of times, and sometimes very far off course, and that's just part of the challenge of a life on earth. But that's why we came here. And he said, and contrary to what a lot of religious holy men say, God or the source does not manipulate the events on earth.
Right.
God or the source is like a passive observer watching and experiencing through us everything that the source has created, but doesn't intervene. It doesn't answer when you pray. When people pray to the source, it's not the source listening and saying, "Okay, well, I kind of like this person, so I'll give him or her what he wants." Or I don't like that person and I won't, and the source doesn't put obstacles in our way or give us challenges. The sources are sort of very passive, and furthermore, the source doesn't make rules for us to follow. So all the religious holy men who say God tells you that you must do this, this, and this, that's just all made up by men. The source does not make rules for us to follow, and so when we die, we just leave our physical bodies behind, our containers, and we all go back to the spirit side, no matter what we did on earth, because the source does not judge us for what we did, and there is no punishment, there is no hell, there is no Satan. Everyone goes back to the place we came from, called the spirit side, and so that's as you well know, that's very much of a contrary to what the Christian church and a lot of other religions preach. But he says that's the way it is.
Right.
Go ahead.
I grew up Roman Catholic also, and there's a lot of, just as you had some unanswered questions, if you will, some things that I like to kind of branch out on my own. So although I was raised Roman Catholic and I have all my sacraments, and it's just a fact of, I always say I'm not very religious, but I'm very spiritual, and I have a lot of faith. And what I mean by saying that is that I look at a lot of different cultures, a lot of different religions, and I kind of take bits and pieces, if you will, out of things that I would believe, that I would feel as though was right, if that's even the proper word. But so I could kind of understand what you're saying. I mean, and I think they did the whole good and evil, heaven and hell, because we always needed something to. It's kind of like the yin yang. You always need something to balance out, and I believe that's why us as humans do that, is to kind of try to balance everything out.
Well, yeah, and a lot for religious holy leaders, a lot of it had to do with power and control.
Right.
And so whether it be the Catholic leaders or the Protestants or the various other religions, they all wanted to exert as much power and influence over their followers as they could. And one of the ways to control their followers is through guilt and fear. So on the guilt side, they say that God has made a bunch of rules for us to follow, including how to worship God, when and where, and so on. And Catholics have a lot of those rules. And so then they would say, and if you don't follow those rules, you're offending God, and you should feel badly about that, should feel guilty. And furthermore, if you offend God and don't follow his rules, and you don't make amends before you die, then God will judge you, and he may send you to a horrible place called hell, or maybe just a stepping stone place called purgatory. And so there's all this fear of, okay, if I don't go to church when I'm supposed to, if I don't do all the sacraments when I'm supposed to, then, and if I should happen to die by a heart attack suddenly on the street, it's like, I could end up in an awful place called hell for eternity. And you think about that, that's pretty scary. Pretty scary concept.
Right.
And so that's how one of the ways that they got people to, come to church and follow the rules. And so, and Albert tells me, well, that's just their way of doing it. I mean, these men wanted to control their followers, and that's how they did it. But he said, there is no hell, there is no judgment, there is no punishment. Everyone goes back to the spirit side when their physical bodies die. So that's hard for a lot of people to accept, especially if you've been raised, as a Christian as I have. But
right.
That's the way it is. And the more I think about it, the more I think, yeah, that just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying makes a lot of sense too. But of course, as anything else, like you said, your mind is kind of programmed one way. And I'm sure there's a lot of listeners, and such as myself here, there's a part of me that truly believes in what you're saying, and there's that part of me that was raised differently. So it's always that fight. I'm sure you can appreciate that. I mean, I think you may have a little more of an edge than us that are listening to you do, because the fact that, obviously because of Albert, and, you believe in that, and I truly believe in what you're saying, but for me not to have that tangibility that you do, it kind of makes me feel a little more, I don't want to say skeptical, because I'm not by any means, but it makes me a little harder to appreciate, I guess, what you're saying.
No, that's very understandable because, I mean, if you had the opportunity to speak with Albert, I'm sure you would be same position as I am. And, of course, he's...
Believe me, I'd love to.
Yes, and I've had a lot of people say that, but he basically said that he has a number of messengers around the world. I'm one of them, so I'm just a small cog in the wheel. But he said that, he's hoping to spread his revelations through his channels like me, in my case, by writing books so people can read what he said. And people are going to struggle with it. I mean, it's not easy to accept everything that he says, and everyone's going to have a bit of a struggle with it. But eventually you have to believe what you think is true.
Absolutely.
And but what he said to me was, he said, it doesn't matter if people, or if all the people who read your books or who speak with you believe what I've told you. He said, because it doesn't matter at the end of the day when they die, they go to the spirit side, and then they'll know I'm right. So you can believe it now, or you can believe it later.
That's understandable. Definitely understandable. Now, let's go to the, you know what? I'm going to take a break, I think, early, and then what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll do the astral projection part, if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
All right, sounds good. All right, we'll be back in a minute.
Warning. This program may contain material that is controversial to some listeners. Spontaneous enlightenment may occur.
All right, welcome back to Paranormal Science. I'll tell you, this is honestly one of my personal best favorite shows, I have to say. That's
a good show.
It really is. I'm absolutely enjoying this. We're talking with Garnet Schulhauser. Garnet, you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Right,
hey,
excellent.
Before we move on to the next topic, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Okay, you're talking, basically what I understand, this is like reincarnation. We die, we come back. We die, we come back. From what you're describing, that's what it sounds like to me.
That's exactly how it is.
Okay.
And the choice, you can come back here as often as you want, and when you finish the current life, you go through what's called a life review, where you go back and look at all the aspects of your life, and you can learn about the mistakes you made and try to figure out why and where you went off course, and then you can plan your next life. You don't have to come back; it's your choice.
Okay.
You can stop incarnating, or you can keep on incarnating here until you're satisfied you've learned all your lessons, or in fact, you could even incarnate on other planets in our universe and different life forms. You're not stuck with Earth. You can go to very, very many places, or you can just sit and have a nice time on the spirit side. Nobody makes you do anything.
Okay, that was my next question I was going to ask. Like, we're paranormal investigators here. Sometimes the spirits that we come across, are these the ones that you were saying are staying on the other side, or maybe come half back to visit?
Yeah, I think it varies. A lot of times, according to Albert, is that some of the spirits, like when your body dies, your soul should just rise up and transform over to the spirit side. Sometimes, depending on the circumstances of death, like a traumatic one, or circumstances where the person really doesn't want to go, wants to stay around, and some of these souls get a little lost and confused in terms of some of them don't even realize that they've actually died, and they hang around, and that's where you get ghosts haunting houses and so on. They're not there lost forever, because eventually their spirit guides will come and basically take them by the hand and say, "Come on, we need to go to you're finished with this life on Earth, this current one. Let's go to the spirit side and where you belong." And eventually they get led away. Now, because there's no linear time on the spirit side, there's no past or future. It's all one big present. So time is very different. And so a house may be haunted by a spirit for 200 years. On the spirit side, that's just a blink of an eye.
Right.
So they actually come fairly quickly to get to lead them back to the spirit side. But no one's ever lost forever. No one ever stays hanging around in a confused state. It just temporarily happens to some people. So that's his explanation for a lot of the hauntings of houses and places, that these spirits are, just haven't made the transition over to the spirit side.
Now I know in our work we've helped a lot of spirits, transverse over. Do you think it's possible that their spirit guide, maybe that was the exact thing, like it kind of helped both sides, therefore it sent someone on this side, the earthly world, if you will, to help that spirit cross over, so it was actually a lesson to both? Is that possible?
Yeah, it is possible, yeah.
Okay,
I haven't talked with Albert in any great detail about that, but it certainly is very possible, yes.
Well, and I know this, I almost said it and sounded sarcastically, but I certainly don't mean it this way. But if you do talk to him about that, and you do, please, of course, give him my best and tell him thank you, because honestly, I'm absolutely, I love the fact that you're on the show, and I'm very intrigued by this. And also, I'd love to have you back on the show also, if you would.
Oh, I'd love to be back on. Thank you.
That's not a problem. All right, we only have about a good 20 minutes left, but I'd like to get into the astro side of it, simply because I'm intrigued by that also. So if you want to pick one of the stories, one of the journeys you went on, and just kind of tell us about it, I'd appreciate that.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the very first astral trip, as I said, we just rose up to the ceiling of my bedroom, up to the clouds, and we sort of hovered above a high spot above our planet for a minute. I could look back on our planet, which is really very beautiful from that perspective, and it really gives you a different appreciation of how we should really treat our planet with dignity and respect. But anyway, we soon went through, it was sort of like a shimmering doorway just hanging out there in space, and he said, this is the doorway to the spirit side. So he led me through it, and even though from the one side it was just sort of all black, once I stepped through it, I found myself standing in this amazingly beautiful meadow. It had like lush green grass and tall majestic trees and wildflowers that were resplendent in 1,000 different colors you never see on Earth. So it was really quite amazing. And so beautiful place. We strolled partway through this meadow, went up a low hill. At the top of the hill, on the other side and the bottom, I could see a group of souls waiting for me. And as we got closer, my heart skipped a beat, because I recognized who they were. They were my mother and my father and my brother and my grandparents and various aunts and uncles who'd already crossed over from the earth plane.
Oh, God bless. That's awesome.
Yeah, and so there they were, and they're immediately recognizable. And if I had any doubt about what happens to my loved ones when they died, there it was. It was plain sight. They were there. They were very happy. They were beautiful. They were well looked after. And the only thing, as I got closer, I had one little misgiving, and that was I was wondering about my mother and about what she would say, because on Earth she was a very staunch Roman Catholic. She was a feisty Irish lady who firmly believed that everything the church said was right, and that we had to follow all the rules. And in Dancing on a Stamp, my first book, I took a lot of shots at the Catholic Church, and obviously disavowed a lot of their beliefs and their dogmas. And I wondered, is she going to be upset with me? And so she allayed my fears by giving me a big hug and saying, everything's okay. She said, if I was still on Earth, I wouldn't be happy about what you wrote in your book. But now that I'm on the spirit side, I see the whole picture, and I agree with everything that you wrote. And so that was like sigh of relief. We're all okay. So a big round of hugs with all my relatives. And then, and the other thing is, even my little dog, Oscar, a mini schnauzer who had passed away 10 years before, he actually came running up from the group towards me, very happy with his little tail wagging his whole body, and he gave me a big greeting. And it just, that the other comforting point to a lot of people is that, yeah, your pets do go to heaven, and you will see them again. And so that was
awesome.
very, very welcoming experience for me. Then Albert took me into this white city. It was gleaming in the distance, place he called Aglaia, which was one of the cities on the spirit side. Beautiful city with all, buildings all white and shiny. And we strolled down the main boulevard, and we eventually ended up in front of a place he called the Hall of Wisdom. And so we went in there into this large circular chamber with a high dome ceiling, and there was a horseshoe-shaped table sitting in the middle. There was 11 souls seated around it, and they all had snow white hair, very smooth, unblemished skin, and they were wearing gold robes with white sashes. And Albert said, this is the Council of Wise Ones. This is the body of very wise and advanced souls who oversee all the incarnations on Earth. And so I spoke to the chair of the committee, whose name was Sophia. She spoke to me and said, thank you for coming. She said, we asked Albert to bring you here because we have a message for you to take back to your fellow humans. And the message is very simple. It said, you guys are at a very advanced stage in your development, your human civilization, and you have some very advanced technology, but your spiritual and emotional intelligence has not kept pace. And the result of that is that too much of our lives are controlled and ruled by our negative emotions, our fear, anger, hate, greed, and so on. And that causes a lot of strife and conflict and pain and suffering on our planet. And she says, we have the capability with our weapons of mass destruction to wipe out all life on our planet if we're not careful, if we unleash them. And she said, we really have to overcome this and get past this crucial point in our development, because otherwise we'll end up crashing and burning like some of the other human civilizations in our past that we're aware of, like Lemuria and Atlantis, and there's several others that we haven't even discovered yet. So they've been watching humans sort of rise up from the ashes, hit a high point, and then crash and burn. We've done this a number of times, and they're afraid that we are currently in a similar position. They don't want to see that happen again. And so her message was, look at, we have to learn to control our negative emotions and fully embrace love and compassion. And we need to raise our vibrations up to a higher level and expand our consciousness. And if we can do that, we can eventually rise up to our planet in a higher dimension that a lot of people refer to as the new Earth. She said that's where we need to go, and we need to be, we need to really put the nose to the grindstone and make sure we get there before we end up destroying ourselves. And so that was the message she said I should take back to my fellow humans. So that was a very interesting meeting. And then from there, Albert took me to the first place outside the spirit side. It's a planet on the dense plane, just like Earth is, quite a few light years away from Earth. It was a planet called Proteus, and this planet looked a lot like Earth, except it was entirely covered in oceans. There was no land masses. And so Albert took me there. We dropped down through the clouds and submerged under the clear blue waters. And there, the plant and sea life looked a lot like the sea life beneath the oceans of Earth. We ended up meeting with two creatures who looked a lot like a humpback whale and a dolphin. And they said to me, and this is all by telepathy, they said, you know, sea life under our planet looks a lot like the sea life under your planet, because most of the sea life on Earth was originally seeded from our planet. That's why it looks the same. And she says that you know, we look like a whale and a dolphin, because that's in fact what we are. And the whales and dolphins on your planet are really our cousins. They were derived from us, and they keep in telepathic contact with the dolphins and whales on Earth. And they tell me that they don't like what they hear, because the dolphins and whales on our planet are very upset at how they're being treated by humans, and they're very intelligent, sensitive creatures, and they just want to live in harmony with humans and the other creatures and with their planet. And they're very upset at the abuse they've suffered over the years at the hands of humans, hunting and trapping and killing.
Right.
And even though a lot of that's been curtailed recently, it still goes on. Some countries still, hunt the seals and the dolphins, or trap them in their nets and put them in water parks. And this is just abuse that shouldn't go on. They asked me, go back to your humans and write about this and tell them we really should stop that abuse. And so it was really something to see, and when you think about it, we really do need to stop abusing the other creatures in our planet, and then to really sort of emphasize this point. He then took me to watch the operations of a shark finning boat on Earth. This was near Indonesia, and I watched as the crew were hauling up dozens of sharks in these long lines, shark after shark. They would cut off their fins with long knives and then toss these sharks while they're still alive overboard, where they would be eaten by predators or die from suffocation because they couldn't swim fast enough to get oxygen through their gills. Right. And there's only one reason for this, as you know, and that's to provide some people on our planet with shark fin soup, which is totally unnecessary. It's not something that we need to live on, right. And it's just a delicacy, and so it's just an abuse of these beautiful creatures for no good reason. And this goes on all over the place. I mean, it's the elephant poaching in Africa and rhinoceros poaching for their horns. All this stuff is totally unnecessary, and it's just abusive to the wonderful creatures on our planet. So that was a real eye opener. And I was getting a little bit discouraged by this point in time, thinking, gee, is there any hope for our humans as a race? Are we going to just continue this? And he said, well, let me give you the good news. He said that there is our planet in a higher dimension called the New Earth, which is where we can all get to, provided that we can raise our vibrations, and we have to do this by discarding our negative emotions. And if we can do that, we can reach this new Earth. He actually took me there to visit the New Earth, and it was an amazing place. I met with a civilization there that were the descendants of a civilization that had lived on our Earth centuries ago in Central America. And they had managed to orchestrate a mass ascension up to the new earth to escape from a barbarian army that was encroaching on their territory. And so now these descendants are now living on the new earth. Very pleasant place. There's no negative emotions, no crime. Nothing bad ever happens there. It's full of love. They live in harmony with their planet. They don't pollute their planet. They live in harmony with the other creatures that they live with. They don't kill them. They don't eat them for food. They live on liquid food made from plants, and they've learned how to shield themselves from disease and repair injured tissue, and to slow the aging process. So they all live for several hundred years. And it's a very idyllic world. They're free to pursue wisdom and knowledge and enjoy the peaceful splendor of their planet. So that's the new earth. That's where we can all get to. We just have to raise our vibrations, and one day we can all get there. So it was really a nice sort of here's the carrot at the end of the stick. This is where we need to go to.
So like a utopia type thing.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And it's still on the physical plane. It's at a higher vibration rate than Earth, still on the physical plane, but very pleasant place to live. And it is some place that a lot of humans have already made the ascension. It's open to everyone else to get there, but you can't get there unless you match your vibrations with the higher vibrations of the new Earth. And so we need to increase our vibrations to match it. And to get there, we have to, as I say, I keep on repeating this, but it's very simple. We need to discard our negative emotions and fully embrace love and compassion. If we can do that, we'll get there.
I couldn't imagine why we wouldn't be able to. Garnet, let me ask you a question. Do you go to like Paracons or anything like that around the country, or even in this country, by any chance to talk about your books?
Sorry, they'll go to where?
Do you go to like paranormal conferences or anything like that?
Yeah, I've been to two so far. To the Ozark Mountain Transformation Conference. I don't know if you heard about it.
Okay.
It takes place every year in Arkansas, and it's put on by my publisher, Ozark Mountain Publishing. And so I spoke there in 2013, and I spoke there again a few weeks ago in July in 2015. And I do have some other conferences lined up in the future, and I do a lot of radio shows. Like this is my 57th radio show.
That's awesome.
Since I published my book, yes. So that's how I try to broadcast my message.
We're definitely honored and proud to be a part of that. I'm going to throw this out there to you. We're having our first annual East Coast Paracon paranormal conference down here in the Scranton area in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Now, granted, it's our different stages. We really have no money per se to bring anybody in or to afford anything like that. But like we charge for table space and vendors and stuff like that. But I'll tell you what, if you were able to come in here, obviously we'd waive the fee for you for vendors and anything like that, because I'd love to just get your message out there. I believe in what you're saying, and you've got a true, real supporter here, if you will. So I'm going to throw that out there to you. We may not be able to afford to bring you down, but if you come here, you have a carte blanche to the Paracon from us, sir.
Well, it sounds very interesting, Joe. And if you email me the details, time, places, and so on, I'll see if it works out. But I'll certainly give it a very serious consideration.
All right, absolutely. Now, we could just do that via your website.
Yeah, my website is garnetschulhauser.com. And that's hard to remember, so the other way of getting there is to dial in dancingonastamp.com, get you to the same website. And on my website, there's information about all my books, and you can watch a book video, download a free excerpt, and you can dial into all my social media sites like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Google Plus, and LinkedIn.
Okay, great.
And I have buy links on my website where you can click onto all the popular online bookstore sites like Amazon and Barnes and Noble and a number of other ones. So it's an easy way to get to buy my book if you're inclined. And there's lots of information there about about my books, and all the radio shows, the recordings are posted on my website. So you can go there and listen to every one of my other shows, or pick out the ones you want to, and every show is different, and every show provides, I like to think, a new nugget of wisdom for people, and so I hope people can just dial in and listen not only to this show will be listed on my website and all the other shows I've been on.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll have what we'll do is we'll try to, as long as we get something going here and you come down to our Paracon, what we'll do is, if that's the case, and then hopefully you could make it, we'll actually put a link, if you don't mind, on our page itself to your page and all your information and stuff.
Oh, please do, yes.
Yeah, okay, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to it. I hope we can make something happen here. I'd love to have you in. Honestly, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It really has.
Yes, it has. Yes.
I'm floored. I would love to meet you in person, and like I said, you have a fan here forever. So,
well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I enjoyed the interview very much as well. You have some great questions, and I would dearly love to show up at your show if I could make it. If you know my timetable and everything else allows.
Yeah, it's actually eastcoastparacon.com if you want to check that out. It's October 10th this year, and it's at the Steamtown Mall in Scranton. We actually partnered with a whole bunch of people, Intercom being one of them, of course, where our show is from, WLK, and it's just, like I said, it's our infant year, but the universe has been good to us, and it's the vibrations for us, if you will, I mean, has just expanded upon it. Some people would say we stepped in some stuff. I'm not sure, but I'll tell you
Good
what.
stuff.
I'll tell you what. It's the universe has been good to us, and it just keeps expanding upon it. And I think you'd add nothing but a definite praise to our lineup.
Well, thank you very much, and you two should be credited for being part of the cause. I mean, you're channeling spirit. You may not realize it, but you are through your radio show, and it may not be a direct contact like I have with Albert, but the fact that you're on there and you're broadcasting and you're interviewing guests, you're one of their messengers, and so keep up the good work.
Well, thank you so much, and I'll tell you what, I have to say this: when you talked to, you said it was the Supreme Council you were with.
The Council of Wise Ones.
Council of Wise Ones. And the female's name again?
Sophia.
Sophia, right? Without getting to a whole emotional break, if you will, as soon as you said Sophia, I immediately teared up and had emotion, and I'm a big enough man to admit that and have no problem saying that. I feel a connection with Sophia, and I believe it's because a friend of mine actually is a medium, if you will, and had mentioned to me something in regards to what you were saying, and that name came up, and as soon as you said that, you'd be surprised the emotion that filled my body.
Wow. That's amazing, and that just shows you that there's a connection there for you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There definitely is. There definitely is.
I'm happy to hear that, because when I hear those things, it validates what Albert has told me and what I've seen, because I've heard this in a number of times where people say they've had an experience with somebody similar, or the name resonates with them, that kind of thing. It just all validates for me what I've been going through, and what I'm saying validates their experience. So it's all very confirmational.
Yes, well, honestly, it has, and we'll definitely get in touch with you. We have about 1 minute left, so I want to thank you again, and thank our listeners, of course, and thanks for being an awesome guest. We appreciate you being here, Garnet.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I've enjoyed every minute.
Yes, thank you, and hope to have you back again sometime.
I'd love to be back.
Yes, definitely. I guarantee that. All right, well, I'm Joe Hawk.
I'm Stan Zurich.
Don't forget to keep the faith.
And sleep tight.